Linda, how you doing? Good to see you, sweetie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, can you hear me?
Yep, I can. Can you hear me?
For all of us. Yes.
Okay,
Perfect.
great. I'll
New
be.
information, sensitive information found every day starting our information. The info you need from Santita Jackson. Weekday morning starting at 6 on WCBT 820. This is AP News. I'm Rita Paul Ray. 4 people shot in Washington, D.C. last night, about 2 miles from the White House. One, a 15-year-old, has died. A police officer is among the wounded. Police Chief Robert Conte says this happened at a musical event that didn't have a permit. That event was associated with a group known as Mochella. There was a truck that had people playing music on it. And while this event was going on, apparently this started on social media. Several hundred people began to gather in the area of the 1400 block of U Street. He talked to WJLA-TV. No arrest that we know of. Many sending Reverend Yuri through.
Okay.
Higher prices for food and gas and many other essentials. Many economists are predicting a recession. The AP's
Hi, Reverend Yuri.
Here it is. That R word again. I don't know if it's a real hospital and look at the phone. Treasury
Okay, I need you to
Secretary Janet
bring
Yellen on the
that down
Democrat
just a
being done by
bit.
Fed Chair Jerome Powell as interest rates go up.
Thank you.
Okay, how about now?
That's great. Great. How you doing, Reverend Yuri?
I'm well. How are you?
Great. Are you in town?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Came in on Saturday.
Okay. Okay. So let's just go one over. Okay. Sorry, I'm on my last minute prep.
I do understand.
I know you do. Okay, okay, never mind. Okay. Whew. Okay, so I got that. All right. Hmm. Okay, Reverend. Let's have a great show. Okay. Let me say hello to everybody. How you doing? I'm so glad that you are here today. And I've got Reverend Dr. Yuri. He's going to give us a wonderful word. Let me see. On that. Let me bring that down. Time. Bring you over here. Okay. Okay, you know what? I can barely hear, but that's okay. Hey, Paula.
One of the most
Okay.
important our lifetime. We'll be live from 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. with updates and results as soon as they come in from across the state. Edward Eisendrath and I will join 60 seconds to check in on the meaningful races here and in other states. WCPT's primary election coverage is sponsored by Fazio Insurance, an independent insurance agency serving residents and businesses in Will and DuPage counties since 1953. Whether you're in the market for a new policy or need to update a policy, their licensed insurance agents are here to help you every step of the way. For more information, contact Paul Fazio at 815-727-2611 or at FazioInsurance.com.
Chicago's progressive club, WCPT 820 with mathematics.
10 seconds.
Okay.
We don't just wear the shirt, we live it. Give, advocate, volunteer, live shine. Go to liveshine.org. Brought to you by County White and Council. It's the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. Hope you had a marvelous Father's Day weekend and a wonderful Juneteenth. We're going to be talking about Juneteenth, and the real story is a lot more complex than is being presented in the corporate media, and we've got to go on and get the story straight. And we're going to, of course, do that here on the Santita Jackson Show. Bernie Sanders came to town, gave out several big endorsements. What does that mean? What does it mean, indeed, for progressives to be moving from the fringes to the mainstream of American politics? Think about that. Think about that. David Daley reminds us constantly that Democrats are underrepresented in Congress. Indeed, we outnumber progressives are growing in number, and Democrats, just in raw numbers, outnumber Republicans in the United States. But you wouldn't think that. You wouldn't think that at all. So we've got to talk about what Bernie Sanders, who remains the most popular elected official in the United States, the only person President Trump did not want to run against. Yeah. He said, I'll run against anybody but him, but this guy. Indeed, many of President Trump's supporters toggled between Bernie Sanders and President Trump. They're fighters. That's what they look like. I mean, whether you like President Trump's policies or not, he looks like he is fighting for his people. And that's what they love about it. That's what Americans are looking for. So we got to talk about this today. What his endorsement means and what you want in your representative as you send them to the State House, to Washington, D.C., to City Hall. What do you want from them? You're the one who has to have the big ask. We're the voters. June 28th here in Chicago. I do hope that you will be voting. Hope that you will spread the word. I hope that if you are one of those persons in the 73 precincts that have been closed, the polling places, not the precincts, excuse me, but the polling places, I hope that you will go to vote.org, vote.org, find out for everybody if you've been purged from the voter rolls. You need to make sure that your voting status is current. And you also can find out from there where exactly you can vote. You can go to one of these super sites, but specifically in your precinct where you can go to vote. So I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota, sending my love to everybody up in Minneapolis, St. Paul. And I want you to please meet my morning stars. Linda got there first, yay, on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. And then meet everybody else, Shirley from beautiful Philadelphia, and Mark Stevens from fabulous DC, and Zelda Robinson, and all my people. Come on over to the Santita Jackson and Friends page. And please become my friend there. Become my friend there. I want to be friends. I want to be friends. I want to be with you over there. And call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. What do you think of this Juneteenth holiday? What do you think of it? What do you think of, the fact is Black people have really essentially been freed for 2 years, and they were not told uh, it was not confirmed for them that slavery had actually ended, but they were in one of those territories, one of those areas that was not yet free. The story is more complex than us celebrating the end of slavery, a condition into which we never should have been placed in the first place. It's a lot more complex than that. It's a lot more complex than that because, in fact, that happened when the Emancipation Proclamation was put out. Yeah, 2 years before. Got a lot to talk about, and we're going to clear that up for you on the Santita Jackson Show. So let's get right to it. I hope that you will meet me over at the South Shore Cultural Center today for the Rainbow Push Convention. Secretary, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. I had a sit down with Reverend Jackson, of course, moderated by Reverend Dr. Todd Yeary. He's going to give us the good news very shortly. And it was wonderful to have him at Rainbow Push talking about our nation's infrastructure. And we had a graduation for those young people who missed their graduations during the pandemic. Facebook came over to give a wonderful forum on the metaverse and how you should navigate it, how you should use it. So we're grateful to Facebook for coming out for that. But today, we're going to be talking about reparations. We're going to be talking about community colleges and the sports luncheon. Mr. Ricketts from the Chicago Cubs the will be the keynote speaker at that luncheon. And voting rights panel, you do not want to miss that today, this afternoon, starting at 1 o'clock. And then, of course, Ahmaud Arbery's father will be feted at a reception tonight. You can attend. It's going to be an incredible reception. We're going to be talking about a lot of great things. And over the next 3 days, it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful convention for you at the South Shore Cultural Center, which sits right on the lake. And that is a good thing because it is about to get very, very hot here in Chicago. We're going to have a high of 94 degrees today. It will be sunny as it is right now. Minneapolis, St. Paul, you have an excessive heat advisory, an excessive heat warning. It will be 100 degrees. It will feel like it is significantly hotter. Please make sure that you're hydrated no matter what your age and check in on each other. If people start talking out of their heads, they could be having heat stroke. Please, please, please make sure that everyone is well. In Major League Baseball, the Astros squeaked out one against the White Sox, 4-3. The White Sox will be playing the Blue Jays later on tonight. The Atlanta team shut out the Cubs 6-0. And the Cubs, maybe they'll come back tonight when they play the Pirates. And the Diamondbacks, well, 7-1 over the Twins. Maybe the Twins will come back over the Guardian later on this evening. In the NHL, Stanley Cup Finals, the Avalanche versus the Lightning. Colorado leads the series 2-0. We'll see what's going to happen tonight in the WNBA. Minneapolis and Chicago struggle this weekend. I mean, and just in squeakers, they lost by a shot. That's right. The Aces 96, the Lynx 95. Oh, the Fever 89, the Sky 87. Everybody, did you have to travel this weekend? I have a lot of friends who came in for the convention, and it was a combination of rough weather, staff shortages. There's a lot of that, and infrastructure challenges that have left the major airlines struggling to keep up with the surge in travel between Friday and Sunday. More than 3,200 flights were canceled, and about 9,000 more were delayed. People got to the airport, and they were told that their flight had been canceled. What do you do if you're out of town? You are stuck at that airport, sleeping there overnight. If your margins are tight, you have to think about that, everybody. When you travel now, you probably need a little extra fare for a hotel room or certainly food in the airport, which is extremely expensive. Think about that. The Supreme Court will issue more decisions on Tuesday and Thursday. 18 will be decided. Abortion, guns, climate change, religion in schools. We'll see what we're going to hear over the next few days and before they go into recess for the summer. Ukraine's bid to join the European Union could bring greater hostile activity from Russia as the EU considers whether the country should be formally considered for candidate status, according to Ukrainian President Zelensky. Indeed, even someone who is not known for really peacemaking. Henry Kissinger has said, you all need to come to a peaceful resolution. Do that. The January 6th House Select Committee, they will hold a hearing Tuesday that will show evidence that then President Donald Trump was involved in a scheme to submit fake electors. Wow. Democratic Representative Adam Schiff told CNN on Sunday, please watch out for these hearings. More and more people are really interested in them. Bernie Sanders backed U.S. House hopefuls Jonathan Jackson and Delia Ramirez this past weekend. What will that mean? We're going to talk about that very, very, very shortly. And then you had thousands who marched on Washington demanding an end to poverty. You didn't hear about that march, but it sure did happen. And have you heard about this, Reverend Dr. Geary? The FBI have been accused of covering up a secretive dig for Civil War era gold. I mean, there is a group called Finders Keepers, and they are accusing the FBI of getting in ahead of them and stealing the gold. Where did the gold go? You tell me. Whoa, what does that mean? What does that mean? And good news, we did it. According to this Common Dreams headline, workers in Maryland vote to form the first U.S. Apple Store Union. And World Swimming has banned transgender athletes from women's events. We will be talking about that more as we go forward because this is a discussion that people are having. Hillary Clinton is warning Democrats not to wade too deeply into the transgender issues. And we're going to go over sometime over the next few days, and maybe certainly next week, how Black medical residents are forced out of training. That's right. And this has been a problem that has been ongoing, Reverend Dr. Yuri, for quite some time, because I have a lot of friends who are physicians. I was pre-med in college. You know what happens to them? Somehow or another, they cannot get into the professions that yield a lot of money, dermatology, the neurological professions, those professions where you want to do transplants and things like that. And now they're beginning to speak out about it. And that's a good thing. I'm really glad to hear that because you have a lot of talented people who can't get into plastic surgery. They can't get into these professions where you make a lot of money. That's right. Reverend Dr. Todd Yuri, pastor of Douglas Memorial Community Church, iconic church in Baltimore, Maryland, vice president of Rainbow Push. It's a joy to have you in Chicago today. You're here a lot, but it's the convention. How you doing?
Good morning, Santita. I am well, and it is hot here. I'm trying to figure out where did I get my bearings on. But I'm good.
Well, bless your heart. Just stay cool and hydrated.
And look, and inside and in air conditioning. At the end of the day, I'm going to be in whatever cooling center is near wherever I am today. We're going to have a good time. Glad to be here. So we go get right to it because I know you have a full plate this morning. I heard it. There's a whole lot going on and a whole lot to talk about. So let's get right to the good news this morning. Here we go. Good morning, Chicago. Come on. Good morning, Twin Cities. Get up. You're moving. Minneapolis, St. Paul. Got to get up. Put your feet on the floor. Feel the coolness of the town coming back at you. Little shot to the sleepiness. Time to wake up. Life is waiting for you. Make some things happen. Take a deep breath. Fill your lungs with LIFE. And get that morning beverage going, that morning Joe, that OJ, and as Santita just said, don't forget, drink that water, stay hydrated, it'll be good for you. Keep that system flowing at an optimal level. I want to talk to you this morning. Summer is upon us. This is the time when typically agriculturally you can't do a whole lot. If you've ever done farming, the time that you do your best work is in the planting season and the harvest season. The summer season is where you have to trust the investment that you've made, the work that you've done, the effort that you've put forward, because now you're coming upon a season where you must now trust the process. That's my message for you this morning, that sometimes when you're in a season or in a place of waiting, you got to trust the process, that if you put forth the effort when the effort is due, the time when you and I must wait is really a time of anticipation and preparation because we are actually getting closer to the goal. Sometimes we can be frustrated because it doesn't feel like we're doing enough. And so we will exert energy in places where energy is really not required. required. Why? Because what you really have to do is understand that part of progress is trusting the process. I'll say that again. Part of progress is trusting the process. Now is the time to build up your confidence in yourself that you've done what you needed to do in the time and the space that you needed to do it. And even though the season when it doesn't look like you can do much work because the conditions just aren't right, you are in a place where you're getting closer to your goal. And now's the time to get mentally prepared for the next phase of your engagement that's going to get you there. Now, when I'm thinking about taking trips, trips are always tricky because you mentioned, Santita, disruptions. You have these plans, you get to the airport, stuff is happening. But I want to talk about road trips, because road trips, I don't have to wait for a crew. Even though gas is higher and I'm a little reluctant, but road trips, I feel a little more in control. So let's talk about that. That I get excited about reaching my destination, but sometimes what keeps me going, even when it feels like I'm not getting there, is I pay attention to the road markers. There are markers along the highway. They have little numbers on them. I used to wonder why they put these markers out here in the middle of nowhere. They mean absolutely nothing to me until I realized it was an association between where I was and where I was going. And when I look at the marker, when you look at the marker of your life, the number changing is a sign that you're getting closer to the goal, and to continue to keep pressing, keep going, keep moving. Even though you may not be as active as you think you ought to be, keep proceeding. Do not change course simply because it feels like you're not doing enough. You are right on the path toward your destiny and your greatness. And I just want to say to you, keep pressing, keep going, don't stop. Know that the work that you put forward, we are going to reap the harvest. The text says, if we faint not, keep doing what you're doing. I know it can be frustrating, but I just wanted to encourage you as we get to the time when it feels like you're not doing enough. Maybe you've already laid the foundation and there's greatness coming your way. So don't get frustrated. Don't be disappointed simply because it feels like there's not enough happening. I promise you, as you continue to do more of what folks will call routine, it's not routine, it's process. And you are making progress. So keep going. It may look like a plain day to you, but as the text always declares, this is the day that God has given us. We're going to rejoice and be glad in it because we're still in it. Now go get it and have a great day. Talk to you soon, Santita. I'll see you later.
Amen. I love that. I love that. Trust the process, everybody. And there is a process to everything. Remember, babies are not conceived and born, they are gestated. Just like all great things. Just like all great things. It takes time. It takes time. And just get in it. It's the journey. Really, really, really. Seeing the markers along the way, all of that really helps you to grow. As you got to grow into wherever you're going to. We've got Dr. Shanita Knighton, infection preventionist, registered nurse, uh, college professor at Case Western Reserve University. She does so much, one of the world's leaders in her particular profession, as we are still in this pandemic. Dr. Shanita Knighton, we're now seeing that the CDC has signed off on COVID-19 vaccines for children as young as 6 months. And yet many parents, most parents, they're not just reluctant, they're like, you know what, I'm going to wait. With the pandemic, is that wise? Dr. Knighton.
Good morning, Santita. So as you can hear, it's background noise this morning. I'm actually up and at 'em with the girls at their national conference.
Yay!
Yeah. So one of the things that I would actually think about like right now is just the notion of the summer months. So typically we know that like flu, COVID-19, and other illnesses during this particular time tend to subside. And so if people are considering getting their children vaccinated or boosted, I would not consider doing so until the fall months, when we know that, long story short, people are going to be dwelling indoors more. There's going to be more of a situation of where there's going to be many more contamination elements in terms of, let's say, air, in terms of the seasons changing, which means that people are likely to have more cold symptoms. So I would think about it from that standpoint. As it comes to safety, this is also that time again, as we know, as we have in the past, just really trying to trust the science and do our homework to understand, does the science that is out there reflect the populations for which the drugs and vaccines are being tested on? And so, for example, if you are an individual and you say that my child has this particular condition, if you say that my child is this particular race, then you will want to find out, and this information is made available on the FDA website, does this fit the population for me to say that this is safe for my child? And so I would just encourage people at this time, especially for the safety of children, just to make sure that you're doing your homework to understand if it is the best fit for you and your family.
Everybody. Well, let me ask you this. What role does race play? I mean, because, Elizabeth Warren, the U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, and Dr. Verholden, and you and others have said, we need to know specifically who's getting COVID. We need to track maybe how they're getting COVID, and how they are processing these vaccines. Why is that important?
Well, for one, as we talk about different things such as animal testing, and we talk about testing that is done amongst trial studies, I know that we've heard of something, and it's called All of Us, and that's an initiative that's being funded by the National Institute of Health that is to try to get more people of color, minorities with different backgrounds more submerged into clinical trials. And so representation is very important, because if we don't understand, even down to the level of, let's say, a melanated mouse versus one that's genetically modified, how that potentially may change the outcome for individuals, then we're going to get lost in the sauce, essentially. And so I've seen situations, for example, with Alzheimer's drugs. I've seen Alzheimer's drugs end up being deployed after they've been approved amongst the African American community, but the initial trials may have, let's say, been amongst 75,000 white men with no representation. And so we have to ensure that the medications, the vaccines, a lot of different things that are being put out there, not only are they being put in the population and saying, hey, this is safe, but we have to understand that those safety trials also involve individuals that were representative of people that may look like you, may have similar symptoms. And this is not necessarily just about a color thing. It's also about conditions, right? So if an individual has multiple sclerosis, or they have some sort of illness, if you want to know that when that work is done, that work is going to be reflective of you, not necessarily reflective of individuals that are like you that may have not necessarily had those conditions.
Dr. Shanita Knighton, and I thank you for that, because, I and several of my siblings have sickle cell trait. We got it from our father. And when you first heard about that, they said you don't have to worry about that because you don't have the disease. And further research showed that no, you do have certain vulnerabilities even with sickle cell trait. And sickle cell trait not only afflicts people who are African, it's people from the Mediterranean. And North Africa, some of my father's lineage actually comes from North Africa and Northeastern Africa in the Middle East. So, it's kind of, and that's why, before I had my weight loss surgery some years ago, Dr. Knighton, I had an epidemiologist, not an epidemiologist, one of my physicians wanted to know my racial background. I'm like, well, I'm Black. He said, yeah, I know that. He said, look, I'm South African. And I'm accustomed to knowing that people have different strains. You've got so many different, all Black people are not alike, all white people are not alike. And if I can kind of track where your family comes from, maybe I can track some issues, some underlying issues that might be there. And so I just think it's important for us to, know knowledge is power. Dr. Shanita Knighton, everybody, at Hey Dr. Knight, at Hey Dr. Nina, at Hey Dr. Nina. Go there every day. I know I do, because I want to see what she is talking about. She has made me hyper aware. You know what? I was proud. Yesterday, I was out in public. I had to go to work. And when I was washing my hands, the lady in the sink, using the sink next to me, asked me if I was a physician because of the way I was washing my hands. You should be proud of me, Dr. Knighton. Everybody.
Santita, I'm so proud of you.
No, thank you. Well, you've taught me. You taught me. Give these girls my love. I love it. I love it. I love it. She's out there being mama today. Dr. Knighton is Dr. Mama. That's right. Let's talk about Juneteenth, everybody. Dr. Mama. Let's talk about Juneteenth, everybody. What really happened? What is this holiday really about? What really happened Juneteenth? 1865. Back in just a minute. Hey, Linear Bob from Silicon Valley. How you doing, D-Ray? Ashley from
I like that, Santita. Dr. Mom.
Dr. Mom. Look, I said, hey, that's it. But please. When I'm working for my father, he is Reverend Jackson. But there are times much more and more he just doesn't he laughs when I would call him Reverend. But he just doesn't respond to me. I guess he got me. He said, look, I am your father. So that is it. And that's all. That's the deck I'm playing from. So, but I'm glad to hear your voice today.
Yes, I was going to say I tuned in live yesterday to the Rainbow Push Coalition conference.
Oh.
I was like partying and praising with a purpose, okay?
Oh, look, girl, next year you got to come on.
Yeah, I see y'all partying and praising with a purpose.
With a purpose.
Like a good time.
Oh, absolutely.
I was like, that's my kind of conference right there. I said, you work good and have fun, okay?
Oh, well, that's we now look. Let me tell you something. My parents know how to do that. They are expert. Oh no, they are expert. We are going to have a good time. Oh yes, we are.
They are. Yeah, I love it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had a good time watching.
I just wish I could have. I wish I could have participated more. I mean, oh my gosh, I was just really. Well, I got no sleep on Saturday night. And fortunately, I had one. Art Norman, who's one of the top journalists in the country, and bless his heart, he looked at my stack of papers. Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, you know what? You do so much research. I said, I just don't roll onto the air. Not knowing what I'm talking about. That's too high risk. Thank you so much, honey. I saw this woman get her face pressed on TV. Not that I needed any help with that, because it is what it is. And Chris Matthews asked her to cite her source, and she just completely came apart.
60 seconds, everyone.
She sure did. I'll never forget that, ever. Whew. Brandon, Commissioner Johnson.
Hey, good morning, Santita.
Good. Attorney Connolly.
Good morning, Santita. How are you?
It's wonderful hearing your voice. Okay, we'll get right to it. Okay.
10 seconds.
Thank you.
Jackson Show.
Everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. I want to hear your voices today. It's 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. I want to hear from you, Minneapolis, St. Paul, and Chicago, and Philadelphia, and Atlanta, and Memphis and Washington, D.C. You all are listening from all over the country, and indeed all over the world. We're watching leftist and populist politics really take fire all across the country and all across the world. And there's a tremendous amount of interest always in what happens in the United States because of the freedom struggles that we have waged and won. You're seeing Apple employees and Amazon employees organize all over the country. And these are the biggest corporations on earth, and they are unafraid. Or even if they are afraid, they're going to go on anyway. So now you have Bernie Sanders, who, according to so many polls, is the most popular elected official in the United States of America. One has to wonder, why is that? Well, he's a fighter. Everyone loves a fighter. Loves a fighter, particularly those of us who are under the boot, and everybody is under the boot these days. And so this weekend he came to Chicago, and he did what he's been doing around the country. He has been endorsing people who are philosophically aligned with him. He endorsed Illinois State Representative Delia Ramirez, who could become the third Latina to go to the U.S. House of Representatives. It's only 3%. They're only 3% of that body. And there are many, many, many more Latinas in the United States. Got to get those numbers up and got to get them right. And Jonathan Jackson, his former state co-chair in 2020, who endorsed him, of course, to fully disclose, he's my brother who's running in the first congressional district. And so we'll see how that goes. But it's very interesting to think about what these endorsements mean, what they mean, because he's endorsed a lot of people. Many of them, many if not most, have won, but it's the people who have not won have made great, great, great showing. So I said, let me go to some people with whom he's philosophically aligned. Senator Sanders, that is, of course, Attorney Erin Connolly. She is one of the top political strategists in the country and organizers. And of course, she's one of the conveners of the Rainbow Push Conference. And we will be seeing each other today, tomorrow, and the next day. And then, of course, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Cook County Commissioner, one of the most powerful positions in the United States. He is one of the officers of one of the largest governments in the United States, the Cook County Board. And so let me start with you, Brandon Johnson, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, because you are an elected official, and do endorsements matter, and particularly an endorsement from someone, I would dare say this powerful, this influential. Do they matter?
Good morning again, Santita. It's good to be with you on this fine Monday morning. And of course, to our dear sister Erin and all of the work that she does. Absolutely, they matter. And, let me just say, it is a real joy, and it is actually quite humbling to know that the progressive movement that certainly did not begin with us, but our opportunity in this particular moment to carry the mantle, to extend the mantle or the work of progressive politics and ideology has been quite a treat. But more importantly, it's been necessary. At this pivotal moment in our nation's history, it is critical that we have platforms that speak to the demands of working people in every corner of the world, whether you are black, brown, or white, young, old. The amount of tension and pressure that families have had to endure really over the course of the last 30 years has been enormous. And that pressure point, we're feeling that. And we're feeling that in a variety of ways. We're feeling that as many of our families are being forced out of communities and neighborhoods that they've been raised in because it's just no longer affordable. Or in many instances, unfortunately, within Black America, it's just not safe. The type of isolation that Black families in particular have experienced through the wickedness of poverty has choked out the dreams of defunded and privatized, where neighborhood schools are just far and few between. The inability for a family to actually make a livable wage as profits continue to expand, wages have shrunk over the course of these last 30 years. And so the hope that progressive politics provide in this moment has restored many of our efforts to organize around not just ideas, but individuals who are willing to carry those ideas out and then begin to move them in policy form. And so these endorsements absolutely do matter. And in 2016, when Delia Ramirez and Jonathan Jackson, I was not elected. Delia was not elected. We certainly weren't running for office. Jonathan wasn't elected. We saw the hope of our communities being articulated when Senator Bernie Sanders ran for president. And it's through the work that Delia and Jonathan and myself have been a part of over the course of at least the last 10 years as we have come to know each other, and we've have developed relationships, and our families have shared time together. Our communities certainly have crossed paths along this incredible journey. To have the endorsement of someone like Senator Sanders, where at one point we were organizers and we were a part of that hope as delegates and again as translators, if you will, of this ideology to our communities. To see it come all the way around, where now Senator Sanders has the opportunity to be joined by two remarkable individuals that have incredible credibility when it comes to this work and the hope of the policy that we bring through a lens of progressiveness. It is certainly a testament to our commitment to this work, but more importantly, it's a testament to what people are actually still hopeful for. They didn't give up. They didn't stop after Donald Trump. In fact, we got stronger. I can go on and on, but I think to your question, it is absolutely important, these endorsements, but it's a substantiation of the work that we have been engaged in for a very long time. And I'm very happy and pleased that the endorsement that I received when I ran for office in 2018 from Senator Sanders, to see my colleagues Delia Ramirez and Jonathan Jackson, two remarkable organizers, incredible folks who are going to help transform and shift politics in this country. It is absolutely not just humbling, but it's invigorating, Santita, to be quite frank.
We're watching what was so-called fringe politics move from the fringes, from off stage to center stage, more and more and more and more. And so I want to hear from you. Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Attorney Aaron Connolly, were you surprised to see Senator Sanders wade into these particular races here in Illinois, as he's been doing all over the country? And how impactful is it? And just how important is it for him to do this?
Well, good morning, Santita, and good morning to Commissioner Brandon Johnson. I was so excited to see Senator Sanders make the investment and come to Chicago to support Delia Ramirez in the 3rd District and Jonathan Jackson in the 1st Congressional District, as he has done throughout the country, because he brings an energy and principles that people are hungry for. And we, as those of you know who were involved in any part of the Bernie Sanders campaign and saw the voter turnout, especially in states like Illinois, for Senator Sanders in the Democratic primary, we know that this makes a big difference, right? People are more disaffected, at least the voters that I'm talking to, than I've ever seen. And someone like Senator Sanders, who sees people, who sees that struggle, who understands where people are coming from, and instead of supporting these billionaires, right? That this is something that resonates not only with progressive Democrats, this resonates with millennials who have gone through, this will be what, our third or fourth recession in our adult life. It resonates with folks that have struggled during the pandemic to make their rent payments, who are worried about losing their house because they can't pay their mortgage. And so having him come and support someone like Delia Ramirez, who fought in the Illinois General Assembly to make sure that folks didn't lose their homes, that there was support for folks who were behind on rent, that we're not forcing families into an eviction crisis, that where people can get mortgage assistance, where there's tax relief coming, and someone like Jonathan, who has been on the front lines organizing in his community his entire life. This stuff matters, and that vote of confidence from someone who they see every single day in Washington going up against folks like Lindsey Graham in the Senate and saying, no, I support workers, I support small businesses, I support people who are just trying to live their lives, and we just need to make it a little bit easier for them. And these are the folks that understand that can see people as well. People want to be heard. They want to know that the leaders fighting for them have integrity, that they have character, that they will continue to fight and not just roll over and vote the way a donor asks them to vote. And we see the evidence of that in some of these difficult votes in the Senate and in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., where we have a filibuster still. We've been promised by Democrats for a long time that we would have voting rights legislation. These things are not getting across the finish line. So Senator Sanders coming and saying, these are the fighters that I know will go to Washington, who will work harder than everybody, who will find consensus, who will make sure that we get it done for you, right? That does make a difference. And let's look at the politics of this, because it's very easy to paint Bernie Sanders with this corporate media brush of, oh, he's too progressive, he's too radical. This is what the people want. And polling shows that over and over and over again. And when we look at some district like the 3rd district, the 3rd congressional district, where Delia Ramirez is up against 3 other men. One is a sitting alderman in Chicago. But we look at the counties, okay? So we have Cook County, we have DuPage County. DuPage County in the primary for in the presidential primary, Bernie Sanders won DuPage County, right? People, they can't write off these progressive policies anymore. These are mainstream policies. This is not radical. This is what the people want. The polling says that over and over again. And I believe that name does have power. And it was so exciting to see both of them on stage with Bernie Sanders on Saturday morning in Humboldt Park, knowing that these are the folks that we're sending to Washington to get things done. People want bold action. We're tired of this talking and debating and then coming up to the next midterm election and nothing's been done yet. These are the folks that will fight, and Bernie knows that.
Everybody, what do you think? Call us at 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT. We're talking about Bernie Sanders and his endorsement. We're talking about really who you want to go to Washington, who you want to go to Springfield, who you want to go to your state capital. What about City Hall? I mean, I just saw this tweet, Commissioner Brandon Johnson, as people are paying, they can't pay for this gas. People getting stuck where they live. Like, do I take my child to school? Do I go to work? Work is all the way downtown. See, I live on 127th, and I wish I could take the bus, but really, the most options that I have for public transportation really end at 95th Street here in Chicago. Let's keep it real, Commissioner Johnson. Well, Representative Lori Trahan from Massachusetts said, she tweeted out something that really just blew my hair back, and I want to talk about it later on in the week. Price for a barrel of oil today, $117.59. Price for a barrel of oil in 2014, Commissioner Johnson, $120.45. So the price for a barrel of oil today is lower than it was 8 years ago. But gas prices are $2 higher at the very least per gallon than they were in 2014. Don't you think we need to talk about corporate price gouging? That is one of the things that Bernie Sanders wants to talk about. I mean, what about that, Commissioner Johnson?
Yeah, you're absolutely right about it. You know, the gap between those who have and those who need continues to extend, and that's the real danger that we are experiencing right now in this economy. And so, as a result of that expansion, as demand increases, the profiteering becomes, really just this effort to not just gouge, but to whip, if you will, working people into submission. Because this is the meanness of this economy, and particularly the way capitalism has worked in this country for a very long time. It's no wonder Dr. King referred to it as one of the evils on the earth. It has been a very wicked system that has punished people over and over again. And I'm glad that you put that into some historical context because, every generation always believes that their particular moment is worse, right? And to some extent, it is true, right? But the speech that my father gave to me, I have a speech to my son. He looked at me just as baffled as I looked at my father, trying to understand and put some things into context in terms of how things once were, right? But as the scriptures remind us, Santita, under the sun, there's nothing new. And what we are quite familiar with is how poverty has been used as means to continue to allow corporations, large businesses, to turn profit off of the misery that those same corporations create. And so there's two quick points here to what you've just raised. One, Bernie Sanders coming to Chicago and essentially coming to the northwest side of Chicago in Humboldt Park, which parts of Humboldt Park I do represent on the county board. When you look at the dynamic nature of that stage, there were not just elected officials. You had labor leaders, like the Vice President, Stacey Davis Gates, and the President-elect, Stacey Davis Gates of that stage. You had black, brown, white. You had South Side, West Side, Northwest Side, Southeast Side, Southwest Side. You had the entire scope of Chicago represented. That's what this movement is ultimately about, and that's who the corporations are afraid of. If we were to ever align our politics with the desire and our needs for civil rights and labor rights, what enormous potential we would have. And those are not my words, those are Dr. King's words. And so the need for consumer protection is something that I've been pushing for. I know Senator Elizabeth Warren, another progressive, has been pushing for consumer protection. She did it at the federal level. We need to see that transfer at the local level. Public advocates, something that I think we should have in Chicago and Cook County, much like they have in New York, so that we can hold these corporations accountable. So that's one, the dynamic nature of our movement. The second thing is this: whether it's gas prices or whether it's keeping people locked out of the economic opportunities that are available, all of this is to the detriment of working people. And this is why I think the words that Congressman Chuy Garcia said on this past weekend were powerful as well. It's because it's not just simply electing Delia and Jonathan. It's giving room to the type of individuals who should run and can win. Because that's what we're battling with. I think that's what Aaron was alluding to as well. That we don't just simply have people who will essentially submit to the will of corporations. And so Amazon has set up another space in the first district. And on the west side of Chicago, what is referred to as West Humboldt Park. And they're touting the tax breaks that they're going to get. They're going to create 500 jobs. What they're not saying is that over the course of that tax break, the so-called incentive that was given to Amazon, tax dollars that would have otherwise gone into critical services for residents of the west side of Chicago that the 500 positions that they are creating over the course of this tax break, 6,000 to 10,000 different people will hold those 500 positions. And so they're essentially recycling poverty in and out while gas prices continue to grow. The price of milk, even if you're the new black and you drink oat milk or almond milk, like I do, Santita, the price of food continues to grow up, to grow. And if we're not standing on our principles and our values, those corporations are not going to feel sorry for the people who are living in the conditions in which they created. We have to rise up together and elect and push for people to not just represent our values, but to challenge the interests of corporations and other individuals who claim to represent our people as well. Because to Aaron's point, it's not just the responsibility of those of us who see ourselves and believe in the progressive politics. Other people have to get right as well. Now, whether you want to walk around with the badge or the label, I'm not even here to argue whether or not you should classify yourself as such. What I am saying, though, is you can't continue to watch the interests of corporations continue to grow, to expand, and then to continue to whip us into submission and then expect us not to say anything or do anything about it. And that's what we're doing in this moment. And I'm grateful for the work of Senator Sanders, but of course I'm incredibly impressed by my brother and sister, Jonathan and Delia.
Well, I've got about 90 seconds left here. Attorney Aaron Connolly, and of course you're one of the conveners, you and Brandon Johnson, Commissioner Johnson, are part of this convention. When you hear that the price of a barrel of oil today is less than it was in 2014, and yet people are paying $6, $7, $8, $9, $10 dollars per gallon, and then I saw, one of the corporate commentators on one of the news shows say, well, this is why, gas costs this much. I was like, no. You cannot justify this. You can't. People can't go to work, Attorney Connolly. Aaron, they can't go to work. Somebody has got to stand in the State House. Somebody's got to stand in City Hall. Somebody's got to stand in Washington and say enough. Attorney Connolly.
And we have these folks on our ballot on June 28th, right? The folks that will stand up and say, this is unbalanced. And these are choices that these corporate entities and the people that work for them are making. They are choosing to have profit over the well-being of their fellow man, period. We are making these choices, and the American people are smart enough and have access to enough information to know that somebody is making this choice to make their life harder. And this is not okay. We've been making terrible choices. We've been making these terrible policy choices and allowing a system to perpetuate over and over where we are putting corporate entities and these corporate personhoods over actual people and families. And people are growing tired of it. We see these movements coming up, whether it's at Amazon or Starbucks, where workers are saying, no, I deserve to come to work, make a fair wage, have decent health insurance, feel safe and secure in my position, because I am the person that is making this profit for you. And you need to see me as a person and treat me well. We are making these choices. We can make different ones.
That's
and we
right.
need people that have the backbone to stand up and say, let's find a different solution. We don't want you to not be profitable, but not at the expense of real families who are out here suffering, making decisions about, do I buy medication or do I buy food for my kids? Do I take my mom to the hospital or do I wait till Friday when I get paid? These are real choices that are being made. And I hear it from my friends who are physicians. I hear it from folks who are rationing their medication. These are real dangerous situations for families, and we are doing it for a profit.
And and it's happening right now. That's why it has been said often that a people get the leadership they deserve. Now, if you don't vote, if you don't raise your voice, if you don't get active, If you let someone just slide into office because you elected not to vote, they're predicting low voter turnout. That's on you. Let's talk about Juneteenth, everybody. Everybody get out and vote June 28th and meet us over at the Southfield Cultural Center. After I get off there, I'm heading over there myself because we're going to be talking about reparations today. And I hope you'll join us tonight. Of course, Erin, if you can, with all these children that she has got, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we're going to be hosting Ahmaud Arbery's father tonight at a reception. We're going to be hosting him. So we'll get a chance to hear his story. Can't wait to do that. I hope to get him on the show. Back in just a minute. Now we're about to talk about Juneteenth. Anyone want to stay? As we talk.
I'm happy to do that. You know, we work so much, Santita. Still got to get used to this new holiday.
Yeah, I know.
You got to get used to it. So yes, celebrating Juneteenth today is the official county holiday, I believe.
Yeah.
We staff had the choice to take Friday or Monday off. My team decided to take today off, and I'm happy for them, by the way.
Well, yeah, well, people like you, people like me, we don't get that time off, but I'm not mad at anybody now. But, you know, time off is important. It really is, but oh boy, you know, it's, but I think that, you know, it's important for us to know what the holiday is, you know, what it means, right? And the circumstances. You know, my brother and Reverend Frank Watkins, who's about to come up, wrote about this. And so we're going to be talking about that, you know, like right now, because we need to know, you know, what this is, you know, really what this is about. What is this about? What is it? So I'm so glad that you all are here, because it's a history lesson. You know, that's America needs to know her history. Just period. That's it. That's all. You know, it'll help us to make sense of everything today. James Hertz, it's good to see you as you are trolling us. I wish you'd call in, you know, because it's disagreement. You know, we can all have disagreements, you know, but what we need to do is make sure that we're operating from the same set of facts. Yeah, I think that's important.
Sending Reverend Watkins doing the key through.
Sure, and I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, as you refute everything that we are saying, I'd like to hear the basis upon which you make these refutations. Otherwise, you're just really talking into the wind, and you shouldn't do that. So there's that. Reverend Frank Watkins.
Yes, ma'am.
How are you? All right. It's wonderful hearing your voice today. You've got Dwight McKee standing by.
All right. Big all my corrections.
No, you know, this is the book that you and Jesse put out so long ago. And the 20th anniversary edition of A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights, is out right now, everybody. And I'm so glad that you're here to talk about that. You know, because it really has been for so long a holiday that Black Texans really celebrated. I remember Jeffy Dixon, our dear friend Dwight McKee. He was, you know, a native of Texas, and he was always very keen to get back to Texas for the Juneteenth celebrations. Can't believe he's gone now. Can't believe it. But he had a real thing about Juneteenth. You know, when quite frankly, many African Americans would look around and go, okay, why is this so significant?
What is
Juneteenth.
What is that?
What is that? What are you talking about? And but even understanding what the Watch Night service and its origins, you know, understanding the Emancipation Proclamation, all of that. These are things that we really need to know. So, And I just want everyone, remember, Renee and everyone, let people know that there's early voting right now. Early voting right now. So you want to go on and be a part of that. Go to vote.org so that you can be sure that your name has not been purged from the voter rolls. But if it has, just you need to go get ready because we have same day on-site voter registration. Vote, 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 vote. But now we're talking about Juneteenth.
60 seconds, everybody.
What is it? Why do we celebrate it? Why should we celebrate it? What really happened? Going to have one of the nation's experts on it, Reverend Frank Watkins, Communications Director Emeritus of Operation Push and Rainbow Push. Of course, when Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. went to Congress, he went with him and became his communications director and top advisor. So we're going to be talking about that. He and the congressman co-authored a book, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. You've got to get it because it talks about this and so many other pertinent topics. A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. Everybody, please, please, please get the book. A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. Thank you so much, Devin. Let's have a great show, everybody. And Aaron, you still there? All right.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. I'm Santita Jackson coming to you from WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. I want you to meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel and on the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page. That is my official page, everybody. We're talking about Juneteenth. Where did it come from? And then the question we're going to ask also is, are civil rights organizations still important? Are they still relevant? Is Black advocacy, is Hispanic advocacy, advocacy for women and Asians, and is that still relevant? And particularly for Black people, because we are dealing with most hate crimes in America are directed against Black people. Black people. So, we can't act as if all this stuff is spread evenly, because it's not. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about that today. What really happened? Juneteenth, 1865, June 19th, 1865. So let's get right to it. Today, I want you to meet me over at the South Shore Cultural Center. Indeed, after I get off there, I'm going to pivot rather quickly to get over to the South Shore Cultural Center at 71st and South Shore Drive. It's going to be beautiful, even as it's hot today. But it's right on the lake. It's going to be wonderful. Today, we're going to be talking about reparations. Mr. Ricketts, the owner of the Chicago Cubs, will be keynoting the sports luncheon as he talks about the different opportunities that you have to go into business in sport, not just on the field, right? Somebody purchases hot dogs. I mean, do you make hot dogs? Are you like Parker House sausage? I mean, think about that. What about those uniforms that need to be made? Yeah, all of that. Those are jobs. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and most of us have no idea what is a part of sport. Tonight we'll be hosting Ahmaud Arbery's father at a special reception. You should be there to greet him, to hear his story and the stories of, sadly, other parents and relatives who are in his position. We're going to have, of course, this big voting rights panel this afternoon at 1 o'clock. You don't want to miss it. In Chicago, it's going to be hot today, 94 degrees, sunny, but in Minneapolis, St. Paul, it will be excessively hot. Indeed, they have an excessive heat warning, 100 degrees, but it will feel significantly higher. It will also be very, very sunny. Please, if you hear someone talking out of their head, I don't care what age they are, please get them medical attention. They could be having a heat stroke. You don't know what could be going on, but they are reacting to the heat. I can almost assure you of that. Everybody needs a lot of water. You need to stay hydrated. You are thirsty or without water, needing water, without your really knowing it in these particular times. And it's supposed to get even hotter here in Chicago over the next few days. So everybody, please be careful and let's look out for each other. In Major League Baseball, the Astros 4, the White Sox 3. The White Sox maybe will come back against the Blue Jays later on tonight. Atlanta shut out the Cubs 6-0. And they will be playing the Pirates tonight, so we'll see if the Cubs can come on back. The Diamondbacks 7, the Twins 1. Come on, my cities, what's up? Maybe the Twins will come back against the Guardians tonight. And the NHL Stanley Cup Series, well, Colorado is leading their series 2-0. The Avalanche will be playing the Lightning tonight. So we'll see where that goes. The WNBA, 2 heartbreakers for Chicago. And from Minneapolis, St. Paul, the Lynx. Ooh, the Aces just eased them out, 96-95. And the Fever, 89. The Sky, 7. By a basket apiece. What can I tell you? I hope you'll meet me at the Rainbow Push Coalition International Conference. It's going to be something really special today. Reparations. Ahmaud Arbery's father, the Cubs owner, talking to us about how we can make money in professional sport. And, of course, voting rights. Cannot wait to get over there to do that. Were you traveling this weekend? Well, guess what? A lot of people had a really hard time. Between Friday and Sunday, more than 3,200 flights were canceled. People got to the airport and found out that their flights were simply canceled. And about 9,000 flights were delayed, according to the data group Flight Aware. Everybody, please be careful as you travel. And you know what? You're going to need some extra money. Yeah, you will need some extra money, like hotel, or certainly enough money to buy food in those expensive airports, because you know it's a lot of money to buy food in the airport. The Supreme Court will issue more decisions Tuesday and Thursday. 18 cases are to be decided. We're looking at abortion. We're looking at guns, climate change, religion in schools. Will we hear about any of these decisions this week? We'll have to find out. Ukraine's bid to join the European Union could bring, quote, greater hostile activity, close quote, from Russia as the EU considers whether the country should be formally considered for candidate status, according to the Ukraine's President Zelensky. This weekend, Bernie Sanders came to town to endorse Illinois State Representative Delia Ramirez and Jonathan Jackson for Congress. Of course, standing on the stage was CTU President-elect Stacey Davis Gates, and a whole rainbow, if you will, of people in Rainbow of Progressives. Wow, in Humboldt Park. Wonderful thing. The FBI has been accused of covering up a secretive dig for Civil War era gold. Indeed, they have been accused by a group that finds these treasures, finders keepers, of going in and absconding, i.e., stealing this Civil War gold. Where is the gold? Where is it? Indeed, this weekend there was a big protest decrying poverty and looking to end it. This past weekend in Washington, D.C., of course, we will see how this goes. Of course, Bishop William Barber was the leader of this Mass Poor People's campaign. It's the Poor People's Campaign who are leading this fight. We thank God for them today. So everybody, let's get right to it. Let's talk about Juneteenth. What is it? What is Juneteenth? What is the meaning of it? Well, give us the context for it. Is it something that we celebrate? Is it something that we commemorate? What is Juneteenth? And what is the context for it? Of course, joining Commissioner Brandon Johnson and an attorney, Aaron Connolly, are Dwight McKee, our own Dr. D, brilliant social scientist, and the co-author of the book, A More Perfect Union. The 20th anniversary edition of it is out right now. Please go to your stores or go to Amazon, go to some book concern and buy it. A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. He and then Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. Did research for years to pull together this book that dealt with this issue and others. Juneteenth. Reverend Frank Watkins. Reverend Frank Watkins, Juneteenth, what is it? Do we, first of all, what is it? Do we celebrate it? Do we commemorate it? Or do we do both?
Well, I think in a certain sense we do both, but I'm very happy that you put this properly. That is, we need to see Juneteenth in its context, because if you just isolate Juneteenth, it may not make as much sense to you, but if you see it in the broader context in which it occurred, it will make perfect sense to you. So you really, in terms of understanding Juneteenth, you have to begin with the beginning of the Civil War, which started on April the 12th, 1861, when a southern state, South Carolina, started the Civil War firing on Fort Sumter. Fort Sumter is a fort located off the coast of South Carolina. And Lincoln started fighting the war, fighting to save the Union. That was his focus, simply to save the Union, because states were leaving the Union and he wanted to preserve the Union. It wasn't about ending slavery to begin with. Frederick Douglass and the abolitionists, of course, had been pressing Lincoln to make it a war to end slavery, but at the time, Lincoln concluded that the politics would only allow him to fight to save the Union. Lincoln was a moderate. He was not a revolutionary at all. He was a very moderate politician. Illinois was his home, of course, who had one principle that he would not back down on. And he was not going to allow slavery to spread to the Western territories. You know, the country was moving westward, and another Illinois senator, Stephen Douglas, had wanted to allow the territories to decide whether slavery would exist in their new state or not. And Lincoln, in the debates prior to his becoming president, when he was running for the Senate in Illinois, this is the position that he articulated against Stephen Douglas. He had what they called a don't care policy. He charged Stephen Douglas with a don't care policy. He didn't care whether there was slavery in the new states or not. Was Douglas's position, according to Lincoln, and according to the legislation that he had introduced in Congress. As I say, Lincoln was a moderate who had this one principle, not to allow slavery to expand into the western states as new territories came on, because he knew that over a period of time, that if states did not allow slavery to expand westward as new states came on board, the new free states would outnumber the slave states, and they would vote to end slavery. That was his long-range political strategy. But because of the continual pressure that Frederick Douglass and the abolitionists put on Lincoln, on July 22nd, 1862, Lincoln told his secretaries that he was thinking about issuing an Emancipation Proclamation. And one of his secretaries, I'm not sure, I don't remember offhand, maybe Secretary of State, I'm not sure, but Stewart suggested that he only make it public after a military victory so as to avoid appearing to be weak. And so on September 17th, 1862, after the Antietam victory in Maryland, Lincoln announced publicly that he was thinking of and considering issuing an Emancipation Proclamation. So he did so shortly after September 17th, 1862. These dates are important to keep in mind because it's key to kind of understanding June the 19th or Juneteenth. Now, many persons in black and white churches, although the white churches don't quite understand the origin of it, but maybe many black churches don't either. But the watch night service started on December 31st, 1862. That was the night that black people all over the country gathered in their churches to pray and see if on January 1st, 1863, Lincoln was going to actually follow through and issue the Emancipation Proclamation. And of course, he did. He issued the Emancipation on January 1st, 1863. Now, you have to understand, it was an executive order. It wasn't a law passed by Congress, but it was an executive order issued by Lincoln that was primarily a propaganda tool to aid in the winning of the American Civil War. He could only free the slaves where he controlled the states. And the states that he didn't control, he couldn't free the slaves. And most slaves lived in the Confederate States, and therefore, in a real sense, he couldn't actually free the slaves with his executive order. But what the executive order did do is free him to allow what were known then as colored troops to join the war effort. And 180,000 colored troops, became part of the Civil War and really became key to winning the Civil War. Now, again, more dates. On March the 4th, 1865, Lincoln was sworn in to his second term. He won re-election, and he was sworn in. March the 4th was our January 20th. I don't remember exactly when the dates were changed, but presidents were normally sworn in on March the 4th because that was when George Washington was sworn in 1789. So March 4th was the inauguration date, later changed to January the 20th, as we're all familiar with today. On April the 12th, the American Civil War ended when General Lee surrendered to General Grant at Appomattox. That officially ended the Civil War. Again, remember the dates. The American Civil War began on April the 12th, 1861. Exactly 4 years later, on April the 12th, 1865, the Civil War officially came to an end.
Everybody, yes.
Shortly after that time, Lincoln had given a speech from the White House balcony that John Wilkes Booth had attended, and he had said that he was going to give certain black people, black men at that time, a limited number of people who could vote, those who had fought in the war, those who were what he considered to be intelligent, and so forth. So there was a limited number of black men that he was going to allow to exercise the ballot. John Wilkes Booth heard that speech and said that's the last speech that Lincoln will give. And on April the 14th, 1865, Lincoln was shot, and he died on the morning of April the 15th. So you have to remember now that he issued the Emancipation on January 1st, 1863. So 2.5 years later, on June the 19th, troops were sent to Galveston, Texas. Remember, you couldn't free the slaves in the states that you didn't control, and the Union didn't control Texas until after they won the war. So General Gordon Granger led troops into Galveston, Texas, and indicated to the slaves there that were still slaves. They didn't know that Lincoln had issued the Emancipation Proclamation, that Lincoln had set them free with an Emancipation Proclamation. Now, following that was on December the 18th, 1865, the 13th Amendment was ratified, which in an official and legal sense officially ended slavery. That's the context of Juneteenth.
And so which brings me to this question, Frank Watkins, and I know that you having to run over to the convention early today, so I want to grab you for just another minute or so or two. Um, what about Jubilee? What about January 1st? I mean, why does Juneteenth loom larger? And now it's a federal holiday as opposed to the date of the enacting of the Emancipation Proclamation. What gives?
But at one level, why not December 18th, which was the official ending of slavery?
So
I think that,
why not?
the January 1st, 1863 situation, as I indicated, was an executive order. And as you know, if a new president came in, he could easily issue another executive order to overturn that. But again, understanding what the Emancipation Proclamation was at the time, it was largely a propaganda tool to aid in winning the Civil War. It didn't really contain the reality of freeing the slaves, because Lincoln couldn't free slaves where he didn't control the states, and by definition, he didn't control the Confederate states. So, I think Texas made June 19th a big date and began to celebrate it, and finally the nation caught up and they determined to make it a national holiday. But again, the reality is what really legally ended slavery was the 13th Amendment, which was ratified on December 18th, 1865, another few months after General Granger had arrived in Galveston.
Well, before you go, is it significant that General Granger, backed up by federal troops, went into Texas to make this announcement, to issue this proclamation? Did he need to go, or did he have to go with federal troops?
I think both.
Okay.
He needed to go, and he could only free the slaves as he brought the federal troops, because the plantation owners obviously had kept the slaves ignorant of the Emancipation Proclamation, so they weren't taking any chances. And now that they had won the Civil War, they had to do some cleanup, and the cleanup was to send the troops to Galveston to alert the slaves that were still slaves, Galveston, that Lincoln had issued the Emancipation, and, quote, they were free. And actually, they were free under the executive order, because the North won the Civil War over the South. So he now did control the states. The Union was preserved, and slavery, was in the process of being officially ended.
Well, everybody, that is why you got to get the book, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. It goes into this in detail and other issues. If you want to understand the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and all of these issues with which we continue to wrestle, get this book, co-authored by Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. and Reverend Frank Watkins, A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. And we're going to be talking with Dwight McKee on the other side. And I want to hear from you, Brandon Johnson. You are a teacher. And of course, you teach your children. Attorney Aaron Connolly, I want to hear your thoughts about this, because to me, part of the rub, Frank Watkins, is that the slave owners kept those enslaved men and women and children ignorant of the Emancipation Proclamation. That, to me, is something that I don't hear the corporate media talking about. And it's something that I think that we've got to discuss. Knowledge is power, everybody. Want to see you at the Rainbow Push International Conference. Going to be heading over there shortly after the show at the South Shore Cultural Center. We'll be talking about these issues today. We're going to be talking about reparations. We're going to be meeting with Ahmaud Arbery's father, have a reception for him this evening. We're going to have a big voting rights seminar. Tom Ricketts, the owner of the Cubs, is going to be talking about how you can get into baseball, football, and all of the sport and make money, not just on the field of play, but as business persons. So much to discuss at this convention today, tomorrow, and on Wednesday. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Frank Watkins,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you for being with us. I know you were running. I know you were running today. Oh. But thank you so much.
All right.
I
Thank you for having me.
Oh no, I gotta have you come back and talk more about the book. Haven't been able to get my brother to come on and talk about it. I certainly want to get you.
And then when I'm going to mention that they find.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sounded like Elvis. Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right.
All right. Thank you, Frank.
All right, everybody. Take care.
I'll see you over there shortly.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye. All right.
Have a great girl.
Okay. Great. So, Brandon, Commissioner Johnson,
Yes, Santita, still here.
what do you make of these slave owners and Dwight and Aaron not telling these enslaved persons that they were no longer enslaved? What do you think about that?
You know, it's a very powerful reminder of again, how rotten this system is. And, making that historical connection to low-wage earners,
Mm-hmm.
not know that they are actually working overtime and being robbed of pay. And I think Aaron can speak to this, that just the wage that exists in this country alone. And it's just, it's why, we have to be far more bold and audacious about our critique of this system. And I know that it can be intimidating for folks, but when you think about the peril that is caused by the dishonesty as well as the rotten nature of greed, and how adverse these operations and these individuals are, that no one is going to just simply relinquish their authority and power when they can continue to take advantage in order to turn a profit. So, my daughter, who is 17, I think I've spoken about her several times. She's quite the character. She told my wife yesterday, Father's Day is important, but Juneteenth is more important. He's tough. She's not wrong. She said, I know, Daddy. We'll celebrate him, but the real celebration is our liberation. And, that's how she is contextualizing this moment. And we have to have that type of real severe critique of this system. Otherwise, it will be mean to not just my daughter, but daughters to come if we don't disrupt it now.
Well, now wait a minute. Now, you taught her. Don't act surprised. Because I'm supposed to feel. Am I supposed to feel sad for you right now? Am I supposed to feel sad for you right now? I just want you to know. Okay, all of the things that you have said have come back to you. Kevin Gray, how you doing?
I'm okay.
Okay. Well, of course.
I was listening to the conversation. Now, for me, the conversation from where I entered into the conversation, because I was actually just about to tweet, enslaved and enslavement, not slave and slavery.
Mm-hmm.
That's like that.
Well,
And that's.
Well, no, I'll bring you right into that. Okay. And Dwight McKee, Kevin Gray. Hold on.
Jackson Show.
Hey everybody, let's talk about Juneteenth, everybody. Let's talk about it as we are heading over to the Rainbow Push International Conference. at the South Shore Cultural Center. Yes, right here on the South Side, everybody, at 71st and South Shore Drive. You need to get over there today. We're going to be talking about reparations. We're going to be talking with Ahmaud Arbery's father. We're having a reception for him tonight, hearing his story. What about voting rights? There's going to be a big symposium on voting rights today. Hope that you are ready to vote in Chicago, in Illinois during our primary, June 28th. Go to vote.org to find out if your name has been purged from the voter rolls. Go to find out where you can vote, where you should be able to vote. 73 precincts have reported the closing of vote polling places impacting almost 120,000 voters. You need to know where to vote, and you need to get out here and vote. They're predicting record low turnout. Please don't make that true. You're the only one who can really turn that around. Let's talk about Juneteenth. We just had Reverend Frank Watkins, co-author of the book with Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. of A More Perfect Union, Advancing New American Rights. Of course, this is something that they talked about and researched for years. And what about the slave master who didn't tell the enslaved persons who worked for him and his wife that the Emancipation Proclamation had been issued, that they were indeed free? See, they were not told. See, that's kind of the rub for me as we're smiling and commemorating and celebrating. Folks were not told that they no longer in slavery. So I want you to talk to me about that at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. That's the part of the story that they continue to leave out. That the slave masters, my father often says, slave masters never retire. Well, and they also don't tell you the truth. So, and that has a modern day context as well. So, joining attorney Aaron Connolly and Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, school teacher. I'm going to get some comments from you, and Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, National Action Network, one of the founders of Operation Push Indeed. Now, we've got brilliant historian and author of the book Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence. The former president of the ACLU of South Carolina. Indeed, he was the manager of Reverend Jackson's historic presidential campaigns in 84 and 88 in South Carolina. We welcome you to the show, Kevin Gray. Your thoughts about this, and then I want to get some reaction from you, Dwight McKee, and from everybody about this history lesson that we just got from Reverend Frank Watkins. Kevin Gray.
Good morning. Well, I did a program out of Berkeley yesterday, and first book I grabbed was certainly it was the Trayvon book. I did a little book a while back called Waiting for Lightning to Strike, and a couple of the chapters, the first two chapters, Fundamentals of Black Politics, DC 101, South Carolina's History of Heritage of Slavery, which I just talk about just the fundamentals of enslavement and South Carolina being the ideological home of white supremacy in America because it was the first to succeed from the Union and the Confederate Constitution, and the language that we deal with now, interposition and nullification, comes out of the heritage of South Carolina's heritage of slavery and being the soul of the Confederacy. When I told you, when I was listening to the off-air comments, I thought that the distinction between the term enslavement and enslaved is an important one because people aren't born slaves, and so decide that they're enslaved. And I think I see a lot more people are using that term, and it's important that they use that term. For me, it's not about celebrating being freed from a condition you should have never been in the first place. I commemorate that day, but this idea of celebrating the oppressor not really freeing you, but giving you some sort of written declaration that you should be free or that you should be a citizen, and that we still had to wait for the 13th Amendment. I look at it all from the continuation of attacking the structures of white supremacy as people fight desperately to shore up those structures, be it through both purges from voting rolls and obstacles to voting, be it capitalism and the structural white supremacy that goes along with capitalism. As a small business owner, trying to pay people a livable wage and same kind of access to capital and credit so that you can survive. I make a delineation between being a small business owner and corporate America, and you got to be careful to do that, because when you just talk about greed, most small businesses are struggling to survive. But if you're just going to have a conversation about how businesses and business owners to include folk like me are the bad guy, well, that can be pretty problematic to me. So that's what I'm looking at when I look at commemorations or celebrations of Juneteenth. For me, the most important thing that has to happen today that's not happening is rebuilding that rainbow coalition, rebuilding this idea of allies and comrades, and the Latino community, and the Black community, and the Asian community, and the gay community. That this idea that our movement is fractured into identity politics, and so that we're not united is also a problem for the continued empowerment of our people. And we have to also start talking about the need to start organizing on a material level versus just a virtual level. Where young folk and folk are so connected to social media that they're not doing the basic things like door knocking and knowing who's in their neighborhoods and educating people as to the issues that are important to them in their community and for their children's future.
So so how should we, in your opinion, approach June 13th? Juneteenth, because we're not even, there's just so many big pieces to me. Kevin Gray, the author of Killing Trayvons, an anthology of American violence, and Waiting for Lightning to Strike, former president of the ACLU of South Carolina. There's so many crucial pieces that are being left out, like the fact that the slave masters, the owners, the people who owned enslaved persons and had them working for them without pay, not for free, but without pay. How are we to react to the fact that no one talks about the fact that they didn't tell these persons about the Emancipation Proclamation? And the nature. What are your reaction to that?
What should it be? Why would a slave master and why would an oppressor want to give you information about your freedom? Supposedly on paper. That's not surprising. For me, it ought to be. We talk about Juneteenth. Well, why don't we make Juneteenth a national day of teaching instead of barbecues and parades? Mm-hmm. That to me, in the context of what's happening in this country now, where the fight over the assault weapons ban isn't just about a fight over assault weapons. It's about white supremacy and white legislators and white people in particular who have all the guns wanting to maintain the instrument of violent power over people, wanting to preserve their rights to kill with impunity, wanting to maintain their rights to keep people as second-class citizens, the wanting and which is real, to have a race war or to have something to where it shores up their perpetuation, continued in perpetuity of power. So for me, I would be satisfied with numbered holidays as opposed to having a holiday named after a particular thing. I don't celebrate Mother's Day or Father's Day particularly because I know that's capitalism. Capitalist inspired too. But you want to talk about critical race theory and all these legislatures banning or trying to ban the teaching of Black history. Well, now is the time for a different strategy. It's just having public education on these days that we ought to note, like Juneteenth, like Emancipation Day, which is turned into a church service at the first of the year. Let's start talking about our history and how we can empower ourselves. Let's talk about gentrification and how it's stripping people of property. Or are we still supportive of owning property? Let's have conversations about those things. Let's talk about the services that are not coming to community. Let's talk about how do you really reform police departments and what do we need to do. Let's
we end this country's, or at least try to curb this country's violent history and the fact that it's predicated on violence. And it's those are the things that are important to me.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, it's very interesting. I think Kevin covered most of the social policy issues, and I think Frank covered most of the historical issues. I think one of the misunderstood parts of this was one of the biggest benefactors of all this was the city of Chicago. In that, what this was about was Stephen Douglas, who was a congressman from Chicago, was a land speculator. And he and his friends began to buy all of the land that he could buy in the Midwest. And then they struck a deal with the southern states that if they would vote for the railroad to come through Illinois rather than through Atlanta, then they would give them the benefits of the Kansas-Nebraska Compromise, the Missouri Compromise, and through an act of Congress, they passed legislation where the states could come in and vote themselves to be free or slave states in order they could negotiate the Illinois Railroad to come through Chicago on their land. And so that's what the real deal was about. And so what happened was then the railroads came through Illinois on his property. And even today, if you follow the railroad, it runs right next to his grave site and his land on 35th Street, downtown 12th Street. It is from it then when the railroads come to Chicago, Armour and Swift then put together a meatpacking company and the meatpacking industry and a retail store, Sears and Roebuck, to be able to service the West. And so the whole economy of Chicago really grew out of Douglas making these compromises on the back of slaves, on the Missouri Compromise, for the purposes of bringing the railroad, the Illinois Central Railroad, to Illinois. It was the first Amazon. And the benefactors of all of this were the businessmen in the North. When we think of slavery and the benefactors of slavery, we generally think about Southern plantation. But the whole economy, particularly of the North, was built on the backs of slaves being maintained in slavery, and an economy built on their backs that they had no equity in. And ultimately, the whole city of Chicago became the center of transportation and of meat and of retail, which is why the name of the Chicago team is the Bulls. That's where the name comes from. And it became the whole economic system really grew out of that. And then the immigrants came in and worked in those meatpacking companies and created the whole advantage of probably 100 of the ethnic groups from Europe coming in and working in those meatpacking plants and the stockyards, and them being able to grow their local economies and their ethnic economies off of the backs of slaves who were sold out on that deal.
You know, and understanding that, Kevin, I'm going to come to you, Commissioner Johnson, and to you, Attorney Conley. When you see that Wall Street was built by unpaid black labor, enslaved labor that was unpaid and black, when you hear the new, well, relatively new American statement is that immigrants built this country. And it's like, wait a minute, it's going all the way past the stolen land of the indigenous people and the unpaid labor of black people. That's the foundation, the economic foundation, if you will, Kevin, of the United States of America. As I see Jonathan Doe, bless your heart, he said, how about you stop working for these slave managers? Listen, genius, we all work for rich people. You have the right and freedom to not work for these slave mongers. In addition, if you don't support these holidays, it's quite simple. Don't celebrate them. Also, if you don't like this country, please leave. Please stop, Jonathan. Black people going nowhere. We built this country. Now, I don't know where you come from and how long you've been here, but when you see a black person in this hemisphere, you know we were brought here to work, that we were not paid, and we're going nowhere. We've been here for hundreds of years. Next, Kevin Gray.
So the lie that continues to be told by politicians when they stand up and talk about American exceptionalism is that the nation is a nation of immigrants. The nation is a nation based on genocide, kidnapping, and immigrants. But it's kidnappees and immigrants. And even going back to the Juneteenth conversation about, well, why wouldn't they tell the enslaved that they were free? Well, look at the history of the Alamo. What was that battle fought? In 1835, 1836, I believe. And it's, John Wayne has played Davy Crockett, and Billy Bob Thornton has been in a popularized movie about the Alamo. But the Alamo was fought because Texas wanted to come into the Union as a slave state. That was the meaning of the Battle of the Alamo. So why wouldn't people who founded that so-called area after they took it from Mexico? I mean, people don't know their history, the Battle of Hidalgo. I think Frank will probably know some of these things better than me, but the fact that people don't know or refuse to tell or in denial about the history of this country, and it's built on violence. And so we got everybody on TV talking about American exceptionalism and not wanting to deal with the bloodshed that got us here. Now, maybe we ought to be having a discussion about reparations on Juneteenth, and what would that mean? And not just a check, but reparations in terms of, is it capitalism that's the ultimate goal for black people? Is it democratic socialism? What is it? What creates a fair and equitable division of the resources that built this country, that got us where we are today? That's the discussion that we need to be having.
Dwight, your response before I go to Commissioner Johnson?
Oh, I totally agree with him. And the other part of the Texas, the Mexican situation that we're going to talk about is that France had conquered Mexico at that point in time, and they had put Maximilian on the throne in Mexico. And that their goal of France was to maintain slavery. So France had endorsed the Confederacy. And they was hoping that Confederacy could win the war because they wanted to be able to maintain control over Mexico at the time. And the Mexicans at one point had to overthrow France because Santa Anna, who's the president of Mexico, was against slavery. And so the whole need for them to annex Mexico was because the Mexicans had abolished slavery, and the American plantation owners wanted to maintain slavery. And so under the pretext of Alamo, they came and stole the whole land. And not just Mexico, not just Texas, but New Mexico and Arizona and many of the western states, that they may be able to maintain slavery. And the connection, again, back to Chicago, as I was talking about the cattle industry, is one of the things they were trying to maintain is those cattle industries in Texas that then began to ship those cattle back to Chicago for those stockyards. And so it wasn't just about cotton, it was also about cattle. And then being able to maintain those major plantations, send those cattle back to Chicago, to those stockyards, through that railroad that they had negotiated through Stephen Douglas, and then feed the East Coast with that same cattle. So the whole economy is integrated around, again, the backs of enslaved people who weren't able to benefit from their labor. And can I put a friendly amendment on that? And this is the critical race theory conversation they don't want to have.
Well, which brings me to Commissioner Brandon Johnson, Illinois Cook County Commissioner Brandon Johnson, and Attorney Aaron Connolly. I only have about 5 minutes left here, but for a couple of minutes for you, I mean, because you're a teacher. I mean, when we have this holiday, Commissioner Johnson, what are you allowed to tell? What do we tell?
Yeah, first of all, I think between Kevin and Dwight, they're making me miss the classroom right now. Bring some things into real context, and this is how we threw it out. Honestly, when I taught middle school and high school, where when you're teaching Black children, in particular, overwhelmingly Black children, 1 year I had, more of a balance of Black and brown, but for the most part of my career, I taught Black children. It was actually one of the motivations that really propelled me into the government. My students challenged me to do more as I was challenging them. And, I think what we said, in the last hour, this economy is quite cruel and brutal. It's one of the most wicked forms of the execution of bondage has been expressed through capitalism. And again, it's why it was considered one of the greatest evils. But one of the things that I think jumps out with what Kevin has indicated is just this, I moved some legislation at the county level, Santita, a couple of years ago, calling out our addiction on incarceration and how jails and incarceration has essentially been used as a tool and a weapon of violence, against Black people in particular, and that our dollars and resources at the county level, a $9 billion budget, should be going towards the advancement of just human need. And so when you think about what we do at the county level, particularly healthcare, the healthcare profession is overwhelmingly made up of women, and particularly Black women. And every economic indicator, Black women are at the tip of that spear of everything that's wrong. And so until we continue to challenge the political space to rid itself of its addiction on the incarceration, which of course is the extension of bondage, and how capitalism has been able to survive as a result of this system, until we continue to challenge and disrupt that, we're going to be fighting over what's left. And unfortunately, what has been left is not nearly enough to provide the type of economic stability that communities like the one that I'm raising my family in. There are more incarcerated individuals, formerly incarcerated folks, that are my neighbors. Literally $1 million blocks. You've seen the reports, Santita. And so, our work continues, and I think what we continue to teach them is what, Kevin and Dwight have indicated. You got to speak the truth. And the question of the Negro in this country, particularly Black labor and the wealth that comes from that, has to be called out. I'm sorry, Aaron, I didn't take up all your time.
Well, you know what? I want Erin to stay for a hot second because, she's meeting me over at the convention today at over at 71st and South Shore Drive, the South Shore Cultural Center. We're going to be talking about this, reparations, today. We're talking about that. We're talking about community college, getting access to that. We're going to be meeting with Ahmaud Arbery's father, having a reception for him this evening. Tom Ricketts, owner of the Cubs, is going to be talking to us about opportunities off the field to make money. But this is why we have to have these conversations on the Santita Jackson Show, on all of these other outlets, because corporate media is giving you one particular line of thought, but they're leaving out the critical pieces. That is why Jonathan, bless his heart, is going to reach out to me. Jonathan, I forget your last name. You're going to tell me to go back. I can leave this country. Leave and go where, Jonathan Doe? And I want your real name. Now, if you're going to put that out there, you need to come on forward and show us your face. Don't throw the rock. Don't hide your hand. Just go on and tell us who you are. Please leave and go where? I built this place. And when you see a Black person here, know that. We built this city. And not on rock and roll. Rock and roll was built on me. That's Little Richard's the king. First person to record a rock and roll song was, guess what? Ike Turner. Stop it. I know who we are here. And I know how fundamental, how elemental to this American project Black people are. Indigenous people are. This land is, which belongs to them. So stop telling people to leave. How dare you? How you know, I've got to go, but you stay right here because we're going to be talking because people are still here on Facebook and on YouTube on the Santita Jackson Show channel. Stay right here. Going to get some closing thoughts from this magnificent panel, and I'm going to get to you, Aaron. Love you, everybody. See you at the Rainbow Push Conference in just a few. Dwight McKee?
Yeah. I was going to say, if I could add the last caveat to this, because it's why history is so important, is after Juneteenth and after they got off those plantations, many of those slaves became cowboys. And so for all the cowboys were the black. There you go. And the white men on horses were drovers. That's right. And those cowboys are the ones that drove those cattle up north to Chicago when they were stored in the slaughterhouses. And that's why the Dallas team are the Cowboys and the Chicago team are the Bulls. That's the connection there that they don't talk about. So when they talk about Cowboys, they put white boys' faces on it, but these were really those who had gotten off those plantations, who had understood the science of horses and cattle, and became the legitimate cowboy, including the Lone Ranger.
How about
Someone
that?
was in my restaurant yesterday talking about the history of the Lone Ranger. It's what they call a kismet that you would mention that. I had a lot of people come through the restaurant, a lot of out-of-state people, and when you come, you'll see.
Well, you have to let people know about your restaurant, because it's really an historical gathering spot. And indeed, he has one of the largest gatherings of collections of South Carolina artifacts relating to the civil rights movement and to Black people. When you go there, it's a history lesson. He even has my grandmama's charge card embedded on the table.
Your mama gave it to me.
I gotcha. I didn't want to imply, and you should not infer that you took it, because you did not. You took care of my grandmother when she was alive, and I thank you for that. That having been said, I think that we've got to tell the whole story, because I am, when I hear people tell me to go back to Africa, okay, or to leave this country, leave and go where? What are you talking about? The only people who talk about leaving are people who just got here. Okay, because I'm home here.
But for me, the idea is that Juneteenth, we ought to start pushing to make it a national day of teaching.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, what do you make of that, Aaron? What about a national day of teaching?
Well, we need a national day of teaching. We need a national sense of ownership and accountability of the reality of our history. And that's why the whole conversation around critical race theory is so frustrating as a person who loves facts, right? We have to look at the truth. It's hard to realize that we are the empire. That's a difficult thing for many people, but it's time. And we have to realize that we will never be exceptional if we cannot come to terms with that history, atone for it, and that includes reparations. I'm so glad that will be discussed today, because it's necessary for our indigenous folks, for Black people, and we can start with policies, whether that's through our tax system and tax credits to start that process, but we need to think in bold, accountable ways to show our children that we can actually be better, but we have to make different choices. We have to look at ourselves under that critical lens and say, is this who we are, or is this who we want to be? Because we have a choice in it. We can do better. We can make different choices, but we have to shine that light on it. And the manner in which the Rainbow Push Coalition brings people together to do that, listens to the entire rainbow, gets all of those perspectives. We can all come to the table together and find a different way, but there has to be atonement with reparations.
Well, we're talking about that today at Rainbow Push. I don't know if the commissioner is still there. Commissioner Johnson, are you still there?
I am still here. I'm going to ride my bike here shortly, Santita. I have other goals, too.
No, you tell me. Give us your closing thoughts.
I accept the challenge from my brothers. I think what I'm prepared and willing to do is the two brothers who introduced Juneteenth as a national holiday. I think this is an appropriate time for us to dig a little bit deeper. I think to Kevin Gray's point about using this as an opportunity to really educate our people. You know, what I'm intrigued by though is like how our young folks in particular have responded to this moment and how like open they are to the type of radicalization that has to be expressed and demonstrated through, like, which I think is the greatest form of radical, is love. And when you speak and deliver it in that form, that even those who may be uncomfortable or even unwilling to embrace what's being shared and demonstrated can't ignore when people are demonstrating it through love. And that's what we're seeing. And you know, I'm with Kevin. I get the commercialization and how frustrating that is when you see people with flags and meals, because you don't want it to be reduced to that. You know, but for a very long time, because of the way our communities have been stratified, you know, Santita, you've seen this, you've seen this in Chicago. Like, people are talking to one another that didn't do that before. And so I think, to Kevin's point, as much as we don't want to reduce it to some cookout or a gathering, how do we make sure that we make it a national day of education? And what forms and processes do we put in place, you know, where we challenge the thinking of folks? The last thing that I'll say is, I mean, just connecting this to like the overall struggle for liberation in this country. We had a big battle on the county board around whether or not we still should be holding Christopher Columbus up as a holiday, a paid holiday, where workers are being paid in honor of tyranny, right? And it has forced a conversation that have made people quite uncomfortable. We're not unfamiliar with that, but I think what this conversation has done, and what I've witnessed over this weekend, it has certainly recharged and brought, you know, full circle of why public education, why civil rights organizations, I know you're going to get to that later this week, and how and why labor is so important to our overall struggle for justice for all of us to experience emancipation, but particularly Black folks who've been at the tip of the spear of this. So I'm challenged, I'm encouraged. I'm not succumbing to all of the cookouts and barbecues. Kevin, I just want you to know, as a politician, I was kind of like asked to go to all these events. The only thing that I consumed was water.
Oh, well, hold on. Kevin sells barbecue.
Yesterday, yeah, I served barbecue all day yesterday, and I had people come in there with their Juneteenth shirts on and said to me, "This is the place I needed to be on Juneteenth." Yeah, I was like, "Well, we're the new black, so you got to have turkey tips, man." You know. Okay, I've heard that one before too. So when you come down here, you give me some warning.
Ain't that crazy? I want my pork. Thank you.
Oh Lord.
Yes, I said it, and I'm not going to take it back. I'm going to add more to it before I take anything away. Oh, I'm going to get some closing thoughts from you guys. Dwight McKee, and then you, Kevin. Dwight McKee?
I just want to wish everybody a happy Juneteenth, and I guess the last component of that I think you appreciate is that out of that whole system of the railroads, and this is how come history is so cyclical, is that Pullman came up with those same railroads and created his Pullman car. And when he did it, the rest of those who had not been in the field but the house Negroes, he brought them up and put them on his trains as the sleeping car porters. And they are the ones that ended up starting the union, which was the precursor to the civil rights movement that Randolph and that crowd came out of. The irony of it is Lincoln was the president. Lincoln's son was the president of the Pullman Company. And it all became full cycle. And so
half of the blacks on the plantation was in the fields. Many of them became the cowboys that drove the cattle up. But many of the house Negroes became the Pullman porters that created the whole economy of the black community. And they're the ones who then encouraged the other from the north, from the south, to get jobs in Chicago by way of the Chicago Defender, by telling them they had a better shot in the north than in the south. Mm. And so all history is cyclical, and that's why they don't want us to understand it. Remember that only the truth can set you free, and if those people don't want you to know the truth, it's because they don't want you to be free.
Kevin Gray?
I want to wish everybody happy Juneteenth, too. And, of course, Reverend is ringing in my ear, the best kind of slave is a runaway slave. I remember when I was young, I heard that so many times. I'm just really interested in seeing a resurgent movement. I mean, I came up toward the end of the civil rights movement, and I tell folks one of my goals was just to meet everybody, or as many people as I could meet that worked with Dr. King, which is how I landed working with Reverend. And for me coming up, because I turned 65 the first of next month, and thinking about the past is how, like I'm going to use this term, how glorious it was to build a rainbow coalition and to have such a diverse groups of people, from the Arab Americans that work with us, people like Jim Zogby, people like Edward Said, the people that worked out in L.A., like Butch Wing and Eddie Wong.
Don't forget Casey Kasem.
Casey Kasem. I think about Texas and Armando Gutierrez and Tony Anaya
and Jim Hightower and Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, now and working with now and having a coalition of people. You know, I know this fellow by the name of John Scagliotti. John worked with is a gay filmmaker who's out of Vermont, and how they talk about how Reverend raised their movement. We had a coalition. It wasn't about identity politics. Yes, we realized our history and we taught our history. And until we rebuild that coalition and rebuild that movement and stop being so fragmented to fight the growth of what and the firming up of white supremacy in this country, which is happening through the Republican Party and this gerrymandering in all these state legislatures and the gun laws, this open carry, and we have to build that coalition to fight back against this. The Republican Party throughout the South, I would say in the last 20 or 30 years, has tried to make it to where the Republican Party is for white people and the Democratic Party is for black people. They've tried to do it through party registration and all kinds of other methods. So we've got to build this coalition. We got to expand democracy, which means we got to talk about different kinds of things, coalition politics, cumulative voting. We have to expand democracy. But to do that, we have to be organized. And I'm glad that there's energy with young people, but they've got to learn that it's not just a virtual movement. It has to be a material movement where you got boots on the street and you got skin in the game.
That's right. Well, people are relating to each other, because that's the ultimate point. This metaverse, that's cute. But people need people. People who need people are the luckiest people in the world. Children needing other children. Look, we need each other. And we need to meet each other. We need to be with each other. We need to do it safely. But that was the case before the pandemic, everybody. You don't organize online. That's a nice place to be. But you got to knock on doors. Kevin is absolutely right. How did you register those 25,000 voters that you needed to win South Carolina? Did you not go from door to door to door, hamlet to hamlet, town to town, county to county?
From door to door, neighborhood to neighborhood, and knew who our allies were. And right now, we're at a crossroads. We got a country where a party is willing to support autocracy and fascism to maintain control through white supremacy. They would throw the Constitution out the door
to support the idea of autocracy, a strongman, and fascism to keep control of everybody else.
Absolutely.
That's dangerous stuff.
It is dangerous stuff, but we've always had these elements here. Remember, you had people who were loyal to the queen and the king, and people who wanted at least freedom from them. So that's been part of the struggle in this country. You had the royalists, and they're still with us. And you had people who really wanted to be free, and then you had Crispus Attucks and the Rainbow Crew, who said enough of all of this. We want to be free, and we want to be treated as equal citizens. We all have skin in the game here. That's been part of the fight. That's why knowing your history is so important. And so stop telling people to go back to where they came from when we're all on stolen land. I mean, really? Stop it. That's so immature. It's so foolish. It's so ahistorical. It just reveals ignorance. And you cannot afford to be ignorant in this time. You cannot. So bless you with that foolish talk. Heaven help you, because you don't know this country. America couldn't get rid of black people if it tried. Couldn't get rid of indigenous people. Can't get rid of Hispanic people who are Native American people. They're indigenous people who are speaking the language of their conquerors. Do you not get it? We're not going anywhere. And America is not going to advance until it does right by all of us. And that includes you. You got white people in Appalachia starving, dying of black lung disease, who got doped up by their white brethren. So they'd be too doped up and too out of it to fight back. It's called the opioid epidemic. They did the same thing to us in the 60s to try and stop the civil rights movement. They dumped all these drugs in the black community, but it was okay when it was us. But now that it's you, you're suing. Well, guess what? You're still suing, and you're still toothless, and you're still sick, and you're still dying. Either doping people up is the wrong thing to do for everybody. It's never going to be right for anybody. Just stop it. And let's grow up in our politics. Enough already. And let us celebrate, and let us commemorate Juneteenth, and let us understand December 18th. Let us understand January 1st. Let us understand. I love you, everybody. I got to run. Get over to the convention. I will see you. See, my phone is ringing already. I love you, Kevin. I love you, Dwight. Hope to see you today. Hope to see you, Aaron, Commissioner Johnson. Love y'all. Thank you, Devin, for a great show.
All right, y'all be well.
See you all tomorrow. God bless you. Bye-bye. Okay, I want to read a couple of these before I get out of here. D-Ray, I don't know what you're saying. Let me know. Okay. Oh, Ashley, that's how you got to Memphis, sweetie. The Brotherhood of the Sleeping Car Porters. That's very real. Very real. My Uncle Carl got up here as a Pullman porter. And that kind of directed my father here with his Aunt Claire. His Aunt Claire moved to Chicago with her husband because they were, relatively speaking, doing extremely well. She was able to, it's just, our history is what we all need to know. It's what we all need to know. We all need to know it. So I love you, everybody. And I will see you, hopefully, at the Rainbow Push International Conference. You can stream it at rainbowpush.org. And Effie, thank you. I felt that it was important that we know this history and that we talk about it. We need to talk about Laura Bell. What happened? Tell me, because if you can tell me very quickly, because I do need to get over to the convention because I didn't understand what you were saying, D-Ray. Because Facebook, it pulls the credentials of people who are, they favor right wingers. I mean, there's just no other way. There's no other way around it. It's just that's what they do. You know. I mean, I have to go through I have to shoot a lot. I have to go through a lot of hoops to get stories approved, and most of mine are not approved. The ones that I try to boost, most of them are not approved. Okay, all right, Laura. All right, all right. Well, let me know what's going on. If there's something I can do to help, I love you. I love all of you, and I just want to thank you for being part of this community. I love you all. See you later.